Riddle me this. What does freshman Republican Congressman and pathologically lying fraud, George Santos, have in common with the legendary civil rights activist Rosa Parks? Not a damn thing. But somebody better tell him that, because he's convinced that, in fact, they do. Intrigued? Then click that like, subscribe, and the alert bell, and enjoy the video. So it's another day, another week, and another opportunity for freshman Republican Congressman and the pathologically lying fraud who is now federally indicted on 13 counts, George Santos, to say something stupid and dishonest. Let's just play the clip, and then we'll dive into it because it needs very little preamble. Take it away, George.
They come for me, I go right back for them, because I think for far too long they've gotten away with getting along to get along. So no, it's not going to stay that way anymore. I'm going to call them out. You want to call me a liar? I'll call you a sellout. I mean, Mitt Romney, the man goes to the State of the Union of the United States wearing a Ukraine lapel pin, tells me, a Latino gay man, that I shouldn't sit in the front, that I should be in the back. Well, guess what? Rosa Parks didn't sit in the back, and neither am I going to sit in the back. That's just the reality of how it works. Mitt Romney lives in a very different world, and he needs to buckle up because it's going to be a bumpy ride for him.
Interesting that George Santos would talk about bumpy rides, given again that he is federally indicted on 13 charges for various potential crimes. He's also under investigation internationally by Brazil due to crimes related in Brazil. I think he's even under local and state investigation as well. Not to mention the fact that this man is so reviled even by members of his own party that the last poll I checked, again, 80% of his own constituents, 80% want him to resign. That is an unprecedented degree of unpopularity. And 71% of his own Republican constituents want him to resign over the fact that he's lied so often and disgraced his position. Now, I'm just going to remind you all of that, and then we'll dive into the Rosa Parks comparison, which was wildly inappropriate. So the the indictment of the 13 federal charges include 7 counts of wire fraud, 3 counts of money laundering, 1 count of theft of public funds, and 2 counts of making materially false statements to the United States House of Representatives, according to the Department of Justice. All right, so I mean, I suppose it shouldn't be entirely out of the question, given that the leader of Santos's party is Donald Trump, who is also federally indicted and may yet be federally indicted again. But this goes to show how corrupt and morally bankrupt the Republican Party is from top, which is Trump, to bottom, which is Santos, because, of course, he's a freshman congressman. And yet the margin for error within the Republican Party is so razor thin that Kevin McCarthy, the Speaker of the House, is unwilling to censure George Santos and unwilling to act to expel him from the House of Representatives, even though 80% of his constituents want him to resign, including 70% of the Republican Party. Republican members of the New York House of Representatives, so that's the state that George Santos represents in his district. He's from New York. He flipped a previously Democratic seat for the Republican Party. Members of his own state legislature have called for him to resign. And as a matter of fact, there are even a few Republican members of the House of Representatives in the United States who serve alongside George Santos. They also want him to resign. But Kevin McCarthy is too much of a coward and political cynic to push for that, even though allegedly the GOP is the party of family values and Jesus Christ. It's truly reprehensible. And again, as a reminder, all this started when investigative reporting concluded that George Santos lied about his education, where he went to college, his history of philanthropy. He was apparently well known for charitable works and including charitable involvement with veterinary clinics and things taking care of animals. He lied about that. He lied about his family's history of Judaism because he made appeals to the Holocaust and things like that. And then he would later clarify, he was like, listen, I'm not saying I'm Jewish. I'm saying I'm Jew-ish, even though he's apparently a practicing Catholic. So again, the guy is just a nexus of lies and fraud, right? But the Republican Party just can't quit him. They can't let him go because they need his votes in the House of Representatives. But now let's talk about the Rosa Parks thing. This is particularly disgusting. It's one of the most disgusting things that he's said since he's been in the public spotlight, up there with, again, his invocation of the Holocaust with his family. Rosa Parks was a legendary civil rights leader. So this is a woman who in 1955 in Montgomery, Alabama, she sat on a bus. And at the time, of course, there was segregation, thanks to conservative policies, conservative social policies. Public areas were segregated into whites and blacks only, and that included public busing. And Rosa Parks sat in a coloreds only section on the bus, which is, of course, bad enough, right? But she complied with that despicable law. And then the bus driver, in order to make accommodations for additional white passengers, because the white section was already completely populated, completely full, the bus driver got up and moved the coloreds only sign to seats behind Rosa Parks. She was sitting, she complied with the law, right? And then he went out of his way to take the sign and move it back behind her to make her get up and move, and she refused. She took a principled stand. She was arrested. She was also a pivotal figure in organizing the Montgomery bus boycotts. This woman is a civil rights legend, and we rightly honor her. George Santos is not a civil rights legend. He is a pathologically lying fraud, a despicable member of the Republican Party, and there's no comparison to be made here. So we'll see what happens, but I, again, shouldn't be surprised because it's not out of place for Republican leaders, again, even relatively minor ones like George Santos, a freshman congressman, but all the way up to Donald Trump, to invoke the names of iconic, legendary, important American figures and American leaders. My God, Donald Trump compares himself all the time to Abraham Lincoln and George Washington, right? So I guess we shouldn't be surprised that sort of attitude would pervade the party and inspire George Santos to invoke the name of Rosa Parks as though they have something in common, when in fact, they don't.